Yes.
So I'm happy to talk here again, my fourth talk in 3 days. And again, I thank the organizers for that. So I'll tell you about the work that I did with Netanel Lindner, Erez Berg, and Gil Rafael. 2 of the 3 are at Caltech, and 1 is my colleague at Weizmann. And within about a week, there have been 4 papers on similar subjects on the archive. Second one, basically back-to-back with ours, was by David Clark, Jason Elisha, and Kirill Stengel. Another one was by Cheng Meng a couple of days after us, and another one by Vaezi. And there's a related work by Barkashli and Chi. My plan is first to tell you what's the context in which all this story emerges. Then to tell you about the physical systems we consider. Then to tell you what fractionalized marijuana modes are and what's the ground state degeneracy they result in the system. And last to tell you about topological manipulations and one-dimensional non-abelian statistics. So the context is the context of topological phases of matter, and you know the first one to talk about is the quantum Hall effect. And from the quantum Hall effect, we learn a few things that are very relevant here. One is that there are edge modes at the edges of topological systems of the type we're interested in. And another is that interactions in general are good. And they're good in the sense that they introduce fractionalized topological phases. Of course, the main example is the fractional quantum Hall effect with all its amazing consequences like fractional charges, anionic statistics, topological ground state degeneracy, non-abelian physics, and so on and so forth. Now, the second part in the context is the quantized spin Hall effect. And we heard quite a bit about that both in the conference and in the school before. The simplest realization to think about is a system where electrons of spin up from an integer quantum Hall effect of nu equals 1, and electrons of spin down from an integer quantum Hall effect of spin down, of filling factor minus 1. And altogether we have an edge that has counter-propagating edge modes with opposite spins. That edge, as we heard here many times, that edge is protected for as long as time reversal symmetry and charge conservation are both respected. So naturally the question is what happens when they're broken. And the answer was given by Fu and Kane, who observed that, of course, if you violate the condition of the symmetry that's needed to keep the edge modes gapless, they become gapped. So if you violate time reversal symmetry by coupling the 2 edges through a ferromagnet, you gap the 2 edges. You can gap them also by a superconductor. And if you do this kind of structure where in one region you gap with a superconductor, in the other you gap with a ferromagnet, you get in between at the center a 0 mode, because the 2 different types of gapping don't go smoothly into one another. There's a 0 mode here, and that 0 mode is a Majorana mode, and that's the Fu-Kane-Majorana fermion. Now, as all Majorana modes, independent of what realization you look at, you get the degeneracy of the ground state, you get non-abelian statistics, and so on. The question around which basically this talk revolves is the question of, can we extend this idea to the fractional regime? So conceptually, the easiest way to think about it is just to take the same idea that we had before of the quantized spin Hall state and ask what happens if we have spin-up electrons that form a fractional quantum Hall state of filling factor nu, and spin-down electrons that form a fractional quantum Hall state of filling factor minus nu. The system is time reversal symmetric. There are edge modes, and we can ask whether time reversal symmetry and charge conservation alone protect these counter-propagating modes from being gapped. And the answer was worked out by myself and Michael Levin from Maryland. And the answer, it turns out, depends on the ratio of two numbers, the filling factor, this filling factor, and the charge of the smallest charged quasi-particle. And if that ratio, which is, by the way, always an integer, if that ratio is even, then the gapless modes are in fact not protected by the symmetry and can be gapped out just by backscattering. And if that ratio is odd, then the edge modes are protected in exactly the same way they were for the nu equals 1 case. Now this ratio, to take two easy examples, if nu is 1, then E star is just the electronic charge and 1 over 1 is odd, and we get the story that we heard before. If that's the case, I'd like to look at nu is 1/3, E star is 1/3 also, the ratio is 1, and the edge modes are protected for as long as we don't break time reversal symmetry and charge conservation. So, as before, let's break them. Let's imagine a situation, and so far it's mostly a thought experiment or a thought state. Let's imagine a situation where we have indeed spin up at 1/3, spin down at minus 1/3. We have counter-propagating edge modes, and we put superconductors and ferromagnets in some alternating order, and we ask what kind of what happens at the interfaces. So that's what I mostly would like to discuss. But before I do that, I'd like to give two physical systems where a similar situation occurs and which are more realistic. So the first one is, let's imagine we have a quantum Hall state of 1 over m, basically 1/3, and another quantum Hall state of 1/3 in proximity to one another. They, of course, will have counter-propagating edge modes, which we can couple by having by a superconductor, at least in principle. We can couple by a superconductor. I'm being told by my experimentalist friend that this is no easy task, but okay, life is not always easy. Do you think that drawing this in PowerPoint is easy? So a superconductor may gap the two edge modes. Now we'd like also to introduce gapping by a ferromagnet, and for that one possibility would be to have a positive G factor on one side, a negative G factor on the other side, so that we have opposite spin directions on the two sides. Another possibility is to have the G factor the same on both sides, but then we need to have a superconductor that has strong spin orbit in it so that it can couple electrons of spin up of both sides.
So these fractional quantum Hall states are real.
Single layer, real ones, yes. Excuse me?
There's a magnetic field.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely, your type of quantum Hall states, yeah.
Adi, what about, since we are in a dreamland, what about the two fractional quantum Hall states with 15 test time this direction, 15 test time that direction? That will give you also the spin into different directions, right?
That's right, yeah.
No, that's something you can do in part one.
Yeah. It should change on a pretty fast scale.
Will also kill your superconductor.
The 15 test.
Hey, he's a theorist.
Yeah. Let's go to the next realization. The next realization is a double layer of graphene. Oh, of course, I should say, Shankar, clearly we'd like to get rid of the superconductor, and that's something that can be done. This whole thing can happen also without a superconductor, but not for 1/3. For more complicated states, for example, 2 over 5. States that have more than a single edge state in each direction. Anyway, the other realization I'd like to talk about is a double layer graphene. So these are two layers with no tunneling between them. And if we tune the chemical potential in an electron hole symmetric way, meaning the electrons here have some density and the holes here have the same density but opposite charge, then we get filling factor 1 over m here and filling factor minus 1 over m here, 1/3 and minus 1/3, and counter-propagating edge modes which can be coupled using, again, superconductor, ferromagnets, and so on. So that comes out of thinking about, so you know the story of graphene. Many of you know it better than me. We have a single degenerate Landau level at zero energy. If we get close to the edge, the degeneracy breaks, and we have counter-propagating edge modes. And if we have Zeeman coupling, then we'll get the structure that we want with two counter-propagating edges, one on the hole side and one on the electron side with opposite spin direction. Altogether, what we need then are counter-propagating edge modes of filling factor 1/3, and we'd like to see what happens when we couple them. So that was all pictorial. Now to write how it looks. We have an Hamiltonian in which there are these two counter-propagating edge modes, which we naturally write in terms of two bosonic fields, the usual commutation relations, where the commutation relation reflects the filling factor. The density and the spin density are derivatives of these two fields, and we have the usual creation operator, bosonization of the creation operators for electrons and for Laughlin quasi-particle. Now we'd like to introduce the gapping mechanisms, the superconductor, which is, of course, psi up, psi down, and the ferromagnet, which introduces simply backscattering between right mover spin up electrons and left mover spin down electrons, so it is psi dagger up, psi down. In terms of the bosonized way of writing this, one of the two is cosine 2m phi. That's an operator that takes an electron of spin up and scatters it into an electron of spin down. And the other is cosine 2m theta, which is an operator, actually I said it, it should be the opposite. Cosine 2m phi takes two electrons of, for a clear physical picture, it's more convenient to think not in terms of these fields phi and theta, but in terms of charge and spin variables. And in the limit where these couplings are very strong, these cosines pin the values of phi and theta in different regions. And for that, to describe that, it's useful to introduce these operators e to the I pi qj for the superconducting regions and e to the I pi sj for the ferromagnetic regions. And that Q and S, as you probably guess, are charge and spin variables. Qj counts the charge within the J superconducting segment, and Sj counts the spin within the J superconducting segment. Just a second. And of course, there's no point in counting the charge exactly because there's coupling to the superconductor, proximity coupling to the superconductor, so the charge is defined only modulo 2. So that's why an exponent of this type, a phase factor of this type, is the right operator to think about. Shankar?
Yeah, so my question is that, so in this scheme, there is no proximity effect. There is no pairing term induced on the fractional quantum Hall side. It's really just coupling the two edges, that's all.
Right, but it's proximity coupling in the sense that what the superconductor does, it takes an electron of each of the two edge states.
It's actually moving from one side to the other.
Right.
Okay. I mean, I realize that must be there, but I'm not seeing. Which term is giving me that?
So the psi.
Psi term is coming in.
It takes one electron from
Where
the.
is it in the Hamiltonian is what I was asking.
It's the cosine. The psi is the cosine. Is the cosine. Okay. Amir?
Edge has fractional charge excitation, so are you imagining all electrons going in and out?
Absolutely. The superconductor doesn't know about fractional charge. It takes an electron. It takes a whole electron. The ferromagnets cut an electron from the upmoving, from the electron layer of the graphene to the whole layer of the graphene.
But that process at low temperature will be strongly suppressed because
It's strongly. Let's say you're thinking of the irrelevant of the fact that it's irrelevant. Relevant and irrelevant all depend on the amplitude. The statement about relevance is always a statement for infinitesimal amplitude. Will renormalization group lead to the amplitude going up? What we imagine is a situation where we start with the amplitude being large, and then you always renormalize to larger and larger.
You have a pair potential induced. It's a proximity.
Exactly. exactly.
So it's a quantitative question, how to calculate the proximity effect. He's assuming there is proximity effect, and I think it's a reasonable assumption.
And so the assumption that the proximity, these two amplitudes are the strong energy scales, the large energy scales.
In the quantum e to the 1D, beta term is for the superconducting phase, perception tunneling.
Right.
But sometimes you are
No, it's not a Josephson tunneling. I wouldn't call it Josephson tunneling. It's not tunneling of a Cooper pair. It's a proximity coupling between a superconductor and basically a one-dimensional system. So we have these sets of operators, e to the I pi q, e to the I pi s, and we can calculate the commutation relation, and they don't commute. Now, that the ideas basically following Fuencain is that we will get ground state degeneracy out of that. But now in the functional quantum Hall effect, ground state degeneracy is in fact something that we know even without all this complicated structure. We know from seminal works of Wen. I don't want to say classical about something that's a quantum Hall effect, but we know from seminal works of Wen about the ground state degeneracy on a torus. So in fact, what we're creating now, if we think, let's think now of annular geometry of an annulus with this bilayer graphene, for example, and we couple the two layers with this ferromagnetic coupling, for example. So ferromagnetic all the way around one segment, and ferromagnetic all the way around here. In fact, what we did is we created a torus by taking two annuli and stitching them at the exterior edges and at the interior edges. So this is a way we know we cannot create a functional quantum Hall effect on a torus because we don't have monopoles to introduce into the torus. But that allows us to do something that's essentially this, because in the annular geometry, the ferromagnet here enforces that there's a zero charge on the edge, because the edge is entirely gapped. It's gapped all over. It's gapped here and it's gapped here. So there's no charge on the edge. But we can go from one ground state to another. There is a ground state degeneracy, and to go from one ground state to another, we create here a quasi-particle, quasi-Hall pair, quasi-particle, quasi-Hall pair, total charge 0, and move it from the interior to the exterior. This is exactly what we do, what the story of the functional quantum Hall effect on a torus tell us to do in order to get from one ground state to another. It's to create a quasi-particle, quasi-Hall pair and take it around the torus and annihilate it on the other side. So here, we don't have a torus, but we have two layers which mimic the torus, yes.
So for the sake of students, the gap comes from cosine theta.
Right. The cosine 2m theta, yeah. So that effectively creates a torus. Now, now I'd like to, I'll go back to the disk geometry and make all these alternating segments of superconductor ferromagnet, superconductor ferromagnet. And I'd like to analyze the degeneracy of the ground state. I'd like to know how many ground states I have. I know the answer for the Majorana case, for the Fuencain case, since I have one Majorana state per interface, and in this case I have 6 interfaces, and since each pair of Majoranas give me a degeneracy of 2, that will give us 8 states or something. Now, to generalize this discussion, it's useful to introduce pairs of degrees of freedom that are convenient to work with. So it's e to the I pi s and e to the I pi, and turns out sum over all the q's going from 1 to the same j. These pairs of variables commute unless the indices here and here are the same, j and l. If they are not the same, then these are commuting variables, and if they are the same, they have this convenient commutation relation with an e to the I pi over m between them. That tells us simply that the operator e to the I pi s transfers a single quasi-particle, let's say the operator e to the I pi s3 will transfer a single quasi-particle from Q1, from that superconducting segment to that superconducting segment, and that overall defines for us a set of canonically conjugate variables. So after all this technical slide, yes?
So J equals L means that their Q and S are neighboring, right?
Right, yeah.
But it could be neighboring on one side or the other side.
Yeah, and so you need to fix some convention. Either you start this way or you start that way, but it's not going to make a difference. Yes.
This carries fractional charge.
So
It carries fractional charge.
what carries?
This quasi-particle.
Yeah. The quasi-particles are the Laughlin quasi-particles.
Also, they're the same.
Yeah, and now actually the physical picture. So what I was saying, this is all a bit technical. Let me tell you the physical picture. I think it makes it clear. So the physical picture is we have on the boundary we have two types of segments. The superconducting segments are just sort of superconducting quantum dots, which are coupled by proximity coupling to a superconductor and are surrounded by an insulator. This is the quantum, basically the bilayer quantum Hall insulator, so it's an insulator. And these regions where we gapped the two counter-propagating modes with a ferromagnet are also insulating. So we have, in fact, a set of whatever number of segments we have, a set of superconducting quantum dots, each surrounded by an insulator. So the charge on each of the quantum dots is quantized modulo 2. Modulo 2 because it can exchange Cooper pairs with the superconductor that, because superconductors always have charge defined modulo 2. So each of these segments has its charge quantized modulo 2, but the unit of quantization is not 1 anymore, it's 1/3, because it can exchange fractionally charged quasi-particles with the bulk. So the variable that will describe its state, the state of each of these superconductors, is e to the I pi q, where q is e over 3, 2e over 3, and so on. That gives you up to 2e, which is the Cooper pair charge, which is like 0. That will give you a six-fold, or 2m, more generally, degeneracy of the ground state per each superconducting segment. Now, so this is the physics, and in fact, of course, in the Majorana case, m equals 1, and the charge on each of these superconducting dots is defined modulo 2, meaning it can be either even or odd. And those of you who went through listening to my talks earlier in the school, remember this distinction of even and odd parity with respect to the one-dimensional wires that we talked about. What we have here is basically the same thing, but not in a wire, but on the edges of a quantum Hall state. Now, altogether, of course, the total charge on all these superconductors must make sense, in the sense that the total charge of the entire system must be integer, and in fact, both the total charge of the spin-up electrons and the total charge of the spin-down electrons, each one of them has to be an integer, and there may be some localized quasi-particles in the bulk, which will carry some fractional charge. So we need to take care of that constraint, that the total charge will be an integer. That's that's a small detail that needs to be taken care of. But what you see that as we said here, the degeneracy goes like 2m or 6 to the power of to the power of the number of segments, which is like square root of 2m to the power of the number of interfaces, which means that the quantum dimension of this whatever way we call them, of these things that replace the Majoranas, in this case, which we coined the fractionalized Majorana fermions, the quantum dimension of them is the square root of 2m. It's the square root of 2, obviously, for Majorana. fermions, and now it will be square root of 6, or in the simplest case. Yeah.
So this is then no longer very simple Ising-Anian, but is the conformal filter is still a C2 level 2?
It's something else.
But do you know what that is? Or?
I don't. There's a paper of our mutual friends, Chetan and Zhenggang Wang and Matthew Hastings, who analyzed this. I cannot say that this is the easiest paper I've ever tried to read. But they map it onto some SOM level 2 or something like that.
There is some speculation about what the conformal filter
is. Right. But I don't think, after talking to them, I don't think that this is a fully solved question. There is also the question of, can this realize universal quantum computation? And that I'll get to. We need to count how many states there are in the presence of quasi-particles in the bulk. That's a detail which I won't dwell on. But at the end of the day, we get a quantum dimension that's larger than the square root of the Majorana fermion. And we get, and I'll show you very soon, that we get physics that is richer than that of the Murid-Majorana fermions, or the Majorana fermions realized in wires that Shankar told us about yesterday and will tell us much more about today. It's richer than those, but it's not quite as rich as the Reed-Rezai Fibonacci anyons, in which the quantum dimension is not a square root of an integer. So it's somewhere in between, and in fact it defines some kind of non-abelian entities which we don't fully understand. Now this degeneracy is topological in exactly the same way it's topological in the Majorana case. It's topological because it cannot be lifted by a local perturbation, because the quantum numbers are the charges on the entire segment. You want to measure the state of the system, you need to make a measurement on the entire superconducting segment, and as long as it's big, you need a non-local measurement. If you make it small, the anyons on the two ends of the superconducting segment will couple to one another, and you lose the ground state degeneracy. So it's topological in fact, in a stronger sense than the Majorana case. Now, yes? I consider what? Yeah, definitely. Because the essential number here is the cosine 2m phi. And that m is the filling factor. As long as you don't close the gap in the bulk and go from filling factor 1/3 to filling factor something else, or to a compressible state, as long as that does not happen, the edge is universal. And that's the same story that Joel showed in his DMRG. There's something universal. So the electron is e to the I m phi for as long as the gap in the bulk is not closing. Excuse me? That will not change. That will not matter. What matters is what's in the cosine. Now, I discussed ground state degeneracy, and now I'd like to discuss topological manipulations. Now, we usually think about interchanging things, and that comes out of a two-dimensional thinking, and in that case of a two-dimensional plotting. It's easy to think about interchanging this and that, because in 2 dimensions, it's a natural thing to think about. In 1D, it's different. We cannot, I cannot, this whole thing, it's the edge of a bilayer, and as we saw. I cannot take this and interchanges with this. They are all tied. It's like one long shoelace with beads on it, and you cannot cut the edge. So thinking about this as in terms of braiding is maybe not the most natural way to think about this. in some sense, we need to think about trajectories in parameter space, which is what I'd like to say is the only way we will be able to interchange this and that is by introducing tunnel couplings. We need to allow for tunneling like this dashed line here. That's easiest to understand in terms of Majorana operators. Imagine this situation where we have two Majorana operators, gamma 3 and gamma 4, which are very far away from one another and are not coupled. Not only that, but they are not coupled also to the others, to gamma 1 and gamma 2. Gamma 1 and gamma 2 are coupled to one another. So we have a degeneracy only of these two. These two basically do not deserve the name Majorana fermions. They are coupled, they are not energy degenerate, but we can make them by shifting them away from one another. Now, as I said that in the school lecture, if we bring 3 to proximity with 1 and 2 and couple all 3 together, the ground state degeneracy cannot change. And it cannot change because the number of zero modes must be even. And 4 is a zero mode which we do not touch. So if I bring 3 close to 2 and then take 1 away, what I did is I copied gamma 3 onto gamma 1. So by introducing coupling between Majorana fermions, I can copy, I basically define some kind of a quantum cut and paste, or copy and paste. I copy gamma 3 onto gamma 1. Initially, gamma 3 was a zero mode. At the end, gamma 1 was a zero mode. If I write the Heisenberg equations of motion for these two, for the zero mode, I will find that its wave function changed from being a Majorana fermion here to being a Majorana fermion here. So I know how to copy and paste without changing the degeneracy. Now, I gave you this example on a Majorana, I gave you this argument on a Majorana example. It's exactly the same thing on the fractionalized Majoranas. That's how we should, if we'd like to interchange, let's say, this fractionalized Majorana with this one, if we'd like to have a situation where whatever was here will be now here and vice versa, which is another way of saying if we would like to execute a topological manipulation on the degenerate ground state subspace that we have here, we need to play with tunnel couplings. And the way we do that, first we have 1 and 2 coupled to one another, as you see here, and slowly turn on coupling between 2 and 3 and turn off coupling between 1 and 2. Then we have 2 and 3 on and slowly turn it off and replace it by a coupling of 2 and 4, and so on and so forth. That gives us the details. I don't think are something that's easy to grasp from a slide. But what's important, we have a time-dependent Hamiltonian in which we slowly change, we adiabatically change parameters. And the idea is that if we keep the ground state degeneracy constant, the outcome will be topological. And if we want to know what the outcome is, we need to just look at the Hamiltonian and carry out the recipe that Berry and Tony Z, I think, was following him, understood when they talked about geometric phases. So here's the Hamiltonian. First we turn this, then we turn it off and turn this one, then the third one is turned on, and we just need to calculate this. Now I should say, in the case of a fractional, in the fractional case, tunneling is not fully defined. I need to say more. I need to say who tunnels, because I can have a tunneling across from. So you see, this is a ferromagnetic segment, a superconducting segment, a ferromagnetic segment. This is where the fractional quantum Hall effect exists. This is where it's all vacuum. I can have tunneling across this, which means that the fractional quasi-particle is tunneling. I can have tunneling across the vacuum, which means that an electron is tunneling. I can have this, I can have that, and here I'd like to focus on the quasi-particle tunneling. It's the more interesting one. So we can calculate the unitary transformation. Before I tell you what the answer is, I'll remind you what happens in the Majorana case. So in the Majorana case, the unitary transformation that's associated with interchanging two quasi-particles, this unitary transformation is 1 over square root of 2 times 1 plus the 2 gammas that we interchange. I have to say, for the students who listened to my talk earlier in the week, I wrote it in a completely equivalent way as e to the I pi over 4 gamma I plus 1. It's exactly the same thing as written here. And it can be written in other forms as in terms of this operator e to the I pi q. So it turns out this is exactly like 1 plus or minus I e to the I pi q, which is also exactly like e to the I pi over 2 q minus k squared. Where this k, if it's 0, you get a plus here. If it's 1, you get a minus here. I'm telling you all this because this form, in fact, is the one that generalizes to the case where we don't have Majorana fermions, but this a new type of fermions. Now, what I'd like to say about this, first of all, whether it's plus or minus, that depends on the detail of the coupling. There is no sense in talking about the sense of the interchange being counterclockwise or clockwise because we don't interchange. We introduce tunnel coupling. We move in parameter space, not in 2D space. So the plus or minus depends on the sign of tunneling amplitudes. This Q and K are 0, 1, and this operator has the property that if you square it, you get electron parity, and if you raise it to the power of 4, you get 1. And we know that it does not allow for universal topological quantum computation, and if we want to implement universal topological quantum computation, we need to augment it with some tricks which are non-topological, magic state distillation, and so on. Now, what happens when we think about the fractional case? The main thing which I'll focus on because of lack of time is the unitary transformation looks like that, the same way it looked before. Before we had, e to the I pi over 2 times this, and m was 1. Now for a 1/3 case, we get a richer set of unitary transformations because we have more numbers. K can be 0 up to m minus 1, and we have e to the I pi over, for the case we're interested in, pi m over 2, and multiplied by this. So the unitary transformation looks sort of similar, but there's a richer set of them. They, of course, don't commute with one another. We get non-abelian statistics because if we interchange around a superconducting region, we get to e to the I pi q. If we interchange around the ferromagnetic region, this q changes to s. So they form some non-abelian representation of the braid group. Now, they do not give universal topological quantum computation. I should credit here. I don't know if Shankar remembers this, but you heard this talk on January when we were in this fancy conference on an island. And I said, we don't know yet whether it's universal or not. And you said, it won't be, but check it out. So indeed, it's not. But there are indications there are indications that this gives something that's sort of close to being universal.
Let me make another pronouncement. I think magic stick distillation here would be easier. I'm not an expert on that, but for those who are, should really take this seriously.
Yeah, I agree. So I think this may introduce some refinement into this binary distinction, universal, non-universal, and we may find out, looking at this type of transformations, that you can be non-universal but close to universal.
So even Majorana is not universal. This is better than Majorana.
Yes, it's better it definitely as a theoretical construction, it's better. It's unfortunately not easy to realize. So before concluding, if I have like a minute and a half, what did we need here? We needed a set of edge modes that can be gapped, that are not protected by like the nucleus 1/3 alone. The edge mode cannot be gapped because it's protected by sort of charge conservation, if you want. We need a set of edge modes that can be gapped in a single layer, as I showed before in answer to Jim. We can look at edges that separate two phases with the same Hall conductivity, same thermal Hall conductivity, and then in most cases, not in all of them, but in most cases, if these two conditions are satisfied, the edge modes can be gapped. A nice example that maybe we need to think about is the 2/3. There are two phases of 2/3. One is spin polarized, one is spin unpolarized, and the edge modes and if we have a transition between the two, Amir worked on that some years ago. If we have a transition between the two, there will be edge modes that can in principle be gapped, and that's something that's relatively accessible experimentally. So we need a set of edge modes that can be gapped, and we need several ways of gapping it, either superconductor and ferromagnet, or maybe several ways of gapping it by using ferromagnets, or by using a normal backscattering with no superconductivity, but of different types. So I looked in this talk at the simplest case of 1/3 minus 1/3, where there's just a single edge mode in each direction, and then there are only two ways to gap it, superconductor and non-superconductor. But if you have a pair of edge modes in each direction, you can imagine that there are several ways of gapping it. The 1/3 minus, or 1/m minus 1/m case is maybe the tip of the iceberg, and we may need to think in terms of a richer set of K matrices, richer set of edge modes, and there's actually a general classification that Michael Levin and myself worked out, which gives us the general K matrix that's time reversal symmetric, which we basically need to look at all these cases and see, for one thing, see whether there's one that can generate for us a topological quantum computation that is universal. So to summarize, what I said is that non-abelian anyons on the edges, I told you how you can create non-abelian anyons on the edges of abelian quantum quantum Hall states, basically by using couplings to effectively create topologies which are like the torus, which have holes in them. And then you get ground state degeneracy, which is richer than that of Majorana fermions. You get topological manipulation that mimic exchanges and are also richer than Majorana fermions. So, as I said, again, I'll conclude by saying that I think that this is the simplest case to think about, but at least theoretically, there's a whole lot that we don't know yet. I hope that this is also something that can be realized experimentally. Thank you very much.
So, Adi, the obvious question, which I'm sure you've already thought about, is what would happen if you replace the Laughlin states with a Moore-Reed state, a Pfaffian, and you give everything, you follow through everything. We know the field theory to describe the Pfaffian. So what happens if you do? So
it's an obvious question to ask. It's not so obvious to answer. But, no, yeah. So you get if you don't use superconductors, you get a state that will allow for for universal topological quantum computation with measurements. Only when you include measurements. That's actually not our result. It's by Mason Berkeshly and Xiaolang Qi.
I was asking about what happens if the superconductor.
No, with the superconductor, we're working on that. It's very complicated, but and I can tell you a little bit on that.
Yeah,
but
that's why I'm not working on it. That's why I hope you answer this question. But it's going on right now.
Yeah, it's in the process. Yes.
The upper and the lower edge. right? So then I think, so the degeneracy depends on the fact that these particles are not interacting. In the
No.
sense you load them, isn't that true? So
No.
you load E over 3, then another E over 3, then another E over 3, till you load it 2 electrons and then it's back to normal.
Right.
Which means that each addition doesn't cost you any extra energy.
Yeah,
Right,
but it cannot depend on that because it's the usual argument. Let's turn the interaction off.
Yeah.
We get a ground state degeneracy of 3 on the torus. Now let's turn it on. Ground state degeneracy cannot change without the gap closing.
But is it the
Without
same as
the
adding
system.
electron E over 3 anymore?
Excuse me?
Is it the same as adding E over 3 anymore?
Yeah, it will be the same. So the number of states will be the
Let's
same.
say you put Coulomb blockade, then I don't understand it. So let's
No,
say
no,
it's
no.
Coulomb blockade,
No, no,
right?
no, no.
Then it will be lifted. Isn't that true?
Right, but
Okay.
ground state degeneracy on a torus is a thermodynamic statement,
Yeah,
and
okay.
it's the same here. If you make these superconducting segments or the entire thing too small, you lost the degeneracy and the.
But why not the interaction? If I think of a capacitive coupling between the up edge and the down edge, and think of it as Coulomb blockade of one on the other, then as you load one, you're going to pay energy cost, right? And why can't that lift?
no,
That's the picture I have in mind.
No, okay, it doesn't happen because if you do the coupling to the ferromagnet, you take a dipole, right? What I said is take a quasi-particle, quasi-hole, bring it from one side to the other. That will not cost you energy. But think in terms of superconductor, then you know the charge is defined only modulo 2. The superconductor will take care of screening any extra Coulomb energy.
If I put a Coulomb interaction between the up fractional edge and the down fractional edge, that cost you somehow should pay as you load one.
No, it will change the wave functions of the 3 degenerate ground states, but not the number.
There is a new diagonalization which will again ensure
Yeah,
things. That's
yeah.
what you are claiming.
Right.
Okay.
Unless there is a phase function.
Unless the bulk changes, right? Yeah.
When you copy one mode to another, let's say gamma 1 to gamma 2, do you copy the phase of gamma 1 or just create another,
Do I copy what?
the phase of the wave function?
Okay. Do I copy the phase?
Yeah.
Okay, those are Majoranas, so there is only a sign that you can ask whether it's copied or not. That's actually a very good question. And the answer is you need to, I swept this under the rug, but you need to be careful about the question whether in your process, you change the sign or not. And those two different situations, changing or not changing, correspond to these two different signs, plus or minus. And similar story, slightly more complicated, occurs also in the fractionalized case where you may get different values of k.
One more question.
How will the story change if I have two different kinds of modes on the same edge, like a charge and neutral kind of things?
I need to be able to gap, right? So if I have a charge and neutral, they cannot interact with one another and disappear because if I have a charge and neutral, it means that the quantum hole conductivity here and the quantum hole conductivity here are not the same. And then I must have a gapless mode. Now I can think of a different situation, like two-thirds. Two-thirds spin polarized, the spin unpolarized. You will have a charge moving this way, charge moving this way, neutral moving this way, neutral moving that way. And that, as I said, is something to think about. Because that can be interesting. That is gappable. The sigma xy is the same on both sides.
So, if there are no more questions, let's thank Adi again, and
Thank you.
he will get the memento from
Thanks a lot.
the organizers.